everyone. Thanks so much for coming. We're going to wait a minute or so more to let other people join in. So hold on tight. All right, everyone. Well, I'm going to get started. Welcome to our Mukurtu workshop and panel event. I'm Rachel Gattermeyer, and it's so amazing to see you all here. This is a two-part event that explores the content management system Mukurtu and broadly examines privacy, confidentiality, and access issues that relate to Indigenous archival materials. Today is session 2, Mukurtu panel and discussion, which will feature our panel of expert speakers who will talk about their experiences using Mukurtu, as well as how their institutions are addressing privacy, confidentiality, and access in policies and practices. Last Friday was session 1, an overview of Mukurtu, and you can see a recording of this on SAA's YouTube channel, and we'll add a link to that in the chat. So this is a jointly sponsored event supported by the SAA Collection Management section, the Native American Archives section, and the Privacy and Confidentiality section, as well as the Center for Digital Scholarship and Curation at Washington State University. I want to give a huge thanks to our planning team, Jane LaBarbera, Larissa Crayer, Diana Marsh, Rose Buchanan, Jonathan Pringle, Katrina Winden, Elizabeth Russell, and Lotus Norton-Wisla. This event is also supported by generous funding from SAA Council. Thank you. I want to share that the University of Wyoming, where I am in Laramie, Wyoming, occupies the ancestral and traditional lands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Crow, and Shoshone Indigenous peoples, along with other Native tribes who call the Great Basin and Rocky Mountain region home. I recognize, support, and advocate alongside Indigenous individuals and communities who live here now, and those forcibly removed from their homelands. I'm grateful to the associated students of UW for developing the land acknowledgement statement that I just shared. Before we get to the presentations, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items. We are abiding by the SAA Code of Conduct, and we'll post a link to this in the chat. To summarize, SAA does not tolerate harassment in any form. Harassment is any verbal, nonverbal, or physical contact that threatens, intimidates, silences, or coerces. All SAA members, as well as all attendees, speakers, presenters, and exhibitors at any SAA-sponsored event are subject to the Code of Conduct and agree to acknowledge and abide by it when they register for an event. We want this event to be a great experience for everyone, which means that we expect you to be considerate and respectful and also mindful of your environment and your fellow participants. This session is being recorded and will be made available as soon as possible. You should already be muted, but we know that technology is sometimes unpredictable. So if you accidentally get unmuted during the presentation portion, someone from our planning team will go ahead and mute you. We want to respect the time and work of our speakers. There will be plenty of time afterwards to ask questions, and you can put your questions and comments in the chat. We also have an anonymous question form, and we'll put a link to this in the chat. And you can use this to send in questions for the Q&A portion. If you use the anonymous questions form, please make sure that you select today's date so that we can flag it. I'm going to hand things over to our moderator, Jonathan Pringle, and he is going to help us introduce our speakers. So let me stop sharing and take it from here, Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and welcome everybody to this great talk, this great presentation from who I consider three great collaborators and wonderful professionals who I've enjoyed working with in a number of capacities. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jonathan Pringle. I am the Scholarly Communications and Digital Librarian at the University of New Mexico's Health Sciences Library and Informatics Center. I am also here in Albuquerque, and I just want to acknowledge the traditional homelands of the Pueblo of Sandia, as well as the Apache and Navajo nations where I live and work. So I'm pleased to present or introduce our three speakers, and I'll just introduce their bios one at a time here, and then we'll get right into the presentations shortly thereafter. So our first presenter will be Cordelia Hui, who is an enrolled member of the Zuni tribe. She is the tribal archivist for the Pueblo of Zuni, which is also known as the Zuni tribe. Zuni is located in the northwest corner of New Mexico and is the largest of New Mexico's 19 pueblos. Cordelia also has 27 years of experience working in libraries, the majority as the librarian for the Zuni Public Library. She received a master's degree in library and information science and a graduate certificate in archival studies from the University of Arizona's School of Information Knowledge River program and cohort 13. She is continuing work on reestablishing Zuni's archives with a focus on digitizing historical and government resources. And our next speaker after that will be Jennifer O'Neill. Jennifer O'Neill is an assistant professor in the Department of Indigenous Race and Ethnic Studies at the University of Oregon and affiliated faculty with the History Department and Robert D. Clark Honors College. Her interdisciplinary research and teaching is dedicated to centering Indigenous traditional knowledge, applying decolonizing methodologies and Indigenous research methods, developing place-based education, and implementing guidelines for the ethical research of Native American communities and management of cultural heritage collections. Over the past 15 years, she has led the implementation of best practices, frameworks, and protocols for Native American archival materials in non-tribal repositories in the United States through the collective development of the Protocols for Native American Archival Materials in 2006. She also serves on various international and national committees and boards for various organizations, including the American Philosophical Society, the National Native American Boarding School Coalition, the Association for Tribal Archives, Libraries, and Museums, and the Indigenous Archive Collective. At the University of Oregon, she also serves as a faculty co-director of the Native American and Indigenous Studies Academic Residential Community. Prior to joining the University of Oregon, she held previous positions at the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of the American Indian and the U.S. Department of State in Washington, D.C. She's an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde in Oregon. And I also believe that she is a cohort 1 of the University of Arizona's Knowledge River program. And lastly, Selena Ortega-Chiolero is the museum specialist for Chickaloon Village Traditional Council. She lives and works on Matanuska Riverland in South Central Alaska, the traditional homelands of the Atna and Dene. Selena was a member of the 2019-20 Tribal Digital Scholarship Cohort Program at Washington State University's Center for Digital Scholarship and Curation. She is currently a 2021-2023 RBS Mellon Cultural Heritage Fellow and holds Bachelor's of Arts degrees in Art History and Asian Studies from California State University in Sacramento, and certifications in Museum Studies from the Institute of American Indian Arts and Cultural Tourism from George Washington University. And with that, I'm pleased to turn the mic and camera over to Cordelia, who will take it from here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cordelia Hui, and I'm the tribal archivist for the Pueblo of Zuni. A little background information on my position. I was still in grad school at the U of A when our governor and council asked me to organize the records of their office. And I agreed, and then after I finished school, I started work for the tribe as a consultant with the governor's office. And then a couple of years later, I was hired officially as the tribal archivist. But going back to the governor's office, when I first began, one of the things they wanted me to do besides organizing their records was to digitize them. And we're talking about some 50+ years of government documents that were in no order at all. So I knew this was going to be a humongous task. But when I started thinking about, okay, what do I need to do to start digitizing collections? And that's when I thought of Mukurtu. I've been working with Dr. Kim, Kristen, Lotus, Michael, and Alex at WSU with the Mukurtu program since about 2009. When I was serving as a librarian, we were on our way to officially start working with Mukurtu. We had a proposal to the IMLS going about setting up a lab and doing some other things with the program, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we couldn't complete that. But I kept working with Kim and her staff in developing our site. So when I started working with the governor's office, I thought, this would be a really good opportunity to really implement Mukurtu because it really fits what I'm trying to do with our tribal archives. Our archives has a mix of historical materials and government materials. So when it came to digitizing, I had to address a couple of issues related to that. And one of the things was, how are we going to provide access to the materials and who are we going to provide access to? And that was a big question from our tribal council as well, because they're wanting to protect information, to have it in a secure place. So those were the two big issues that we had to answer, was access and who was going to get access. So I started working on some policies, and I do have one in place now that addresses those things. But when I started looking at Mukurtu, I was so grateful that this platform has a function to address those issues, specifically for Indigenous materials and our tribal government materials. So when I presented Mukurtu to our tribal council, that was one of their questions, was how are we going to provide access, and is it going to be secure? And Dr. Kristen actually came out to Zuni with Lotus and I believe Michael. And we had a little training for a couple of our staff, including one of our council members. So that was good. That was the other thing, was having the council look at how Mukurtu works, so that they knew it was a trusted system, that this was something that could be in place, that could address what they needed to address. So I'm really glad that Mukurtu has the functions of setting up communities and protocols to determine who gets to see what and how much they can see. To give you a couple of examples how we've used Mukurtu, I'll use our government resources and our oral histories. The Zuni tribe was part of the Doris Duke Oral History Project back in the late 60s and early 70s. And we received our whole digitized collection from the Library of Congress Folklife Center. So I wanted to utilize Mukurtu also for uploading those digitized stories and presenting our community with an incredible resource. So in looking at the stories and uploading them, again, we had to look at access, who can have access and how much access they can have. So what we did was look at the content of the stories to determine access, and to break it down even further, we had to look at the content because we had to see if they were okay for all the tribal members to hear. We were only going to provide access to the stories to tribal members only, because there's, in our culture, there's certain information that's gender specific. Plus we have seasonal restrictions on the stories. Our stories can only be told during the winter time. So we had to have those restrictions in place. And then also there's information that certain tribal members can only hear. So we had to think about that as well. So when we were setting up our communities and protocols, we set access only to tribal members only. And then going down further, we had to look at, okay, do we allow access to just men and to just women? So those are the things that we had to put in place. And we also had to look at copyright. Our traditional stories are communally owned. No one person owns them. So that's another issue we had to address, was copyright. Also with the government documents, we also had to look at copyright as well. But since all our materials are generated by the Pueblo Zuni organization, anything generated by, programs, employees, whoever that work for the Pueblo Zuni organization, those materials belong to the Pueblo Zuni organization. So that was easy. And access and permission to look at those materials would have to come from our governor and tribal council. So that was a part of our policies as well. But for the stories, it was a little bit trickier because of the gender restrictions and not really knowing what was the actual content of the stories. Just we had to go by looking at the titles, unless we sat down and listened to the stories ourselves. And we had to, since they were seasonal, we couldn't listen to them until the winter time. So that put us back in our work. We're still going through the stories, and we're actually cutting up the sound rolls to put individual stories, to cut them up into individual stories. When I was redoing our Mukurtu site, I had to take a lot of the content down. And when I was asked to be on the panel, I had taken a lot of content down. So I took about 2 days to kind of throw some things on our site to give you guys an example. So I'd like to show you those examples that we have. This is will be our, things are going to change, but this is an example of what our front page is to the site. Our mission statement, our vision statement, and our digitization purpose statement. And these are a couple of the collections that we have, that I put back up. Our Zuni language materials, we have worksheets that I developed when I was at the public library with colors and directions and just general terms, everyday terms, things like that. We also have glossaries that were developed by the Zuni Public School District and the Zuni Dictionary. That was written by a non-Zuni, but he knows how to speak Zuni. So that's an interesting one, but we have those materials up there, and I'm still uploading content. And then our Zuni community collection, just pictures of life in Zuni, everyday life in Zuni. And the next slide, these are some of the things, some of the sub collections that we have in this main collection. And I decided to use the cooking days one because everybody's like, what's with the sheep? Okay, this is our page for the cooking days. We have our summary and our cultural narrative to the collection, and down below is the comments section where people that have are registered for the Mukurtu site that have accounts, they can add comments on the bottom. And we do have comments from community members. It could be like, it's always interesting to hear from our elders about what cooking days were like in those days when they didn't have all the modern stuff that we have now. We still use our outside ovens for baking bread. And of course, all our paternal aunts gather when there's cooking days, especially when men take part in religious ceremonies, and that's in the cultural narrative. And on the side, we have our community protocols, category, collections, dates, creators, contributors, authors. And as you can see on the creator part, we had several community members that provided their input or provided images for this collection. So that's one thing I really like about Mukurtu, is that we can add stuff, traditional knowledge, cultural knowledge to things that we have up, and it gives a fuller picture of some of the content that's on here. So that's one aspect of Mukurtu that I really like, is that people can add their comments on there and add their stories, which is always interesting. And I think there was one more page. Was that it? Okay. Yeah, I just did 4 pages because I didn't, like I said, I'm still putting up content and redoing our site. Going back to the access for government resources, for our tribal government information, we had to decide on several levels of access. One was all access, which would be for our governor, lieutenant governor, and tribal council members. They would have access to everything that we put up on the site, because ultimately permission to use those things comes from them. And next one would be partial access. This would be for tribal administration staff, like our tribal administrator, our division directors, and their admin staff. And again, even the partial access, meaning that they would have to go through governor to get permission to see whatever. And then limited access would be for all of the Pueblo Ozuni organization employees. Requests for access would have to go through their supervisor, and approval coming from the tribal administrator and our governor and tribal council. We're still working on that. Because we now have, we have program directors, and I'm like, okay, where do they fit in? So it's still a work in progress on the access levels. And okay. And like with the cultural stuff, there are restricted and sensitive materials in our collections. Like we have materials on water rights, sacred site information, and looking down the road, Mukurtu might be a way to preserve other information if like certain segments of our community or religious community societies and groups choose to do that. That might be an option for them to save their information and to preserve it for their societies and for their groups. But overall, Mukurtu CMS really fits our needs because it was developed with the needs of tribal communities and institutions in mind, and in regarding cultural heritage items, it's really important, it's digital cultural heritage items in this digital environment. So I love Mukurtu, and I love Dr. Kristen and her staff for always providing such great support. So we're continuing to work with them, and one of these days soon, I hope the pandemic push back a lot of things, like, for everybody else, but we're working on an MOA or an MOU to really officially start working with Mukurtu, and we're looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Cordelia. That's really great. And I was really struck with just how in depth you are using the cultural narrative section in Mukurtu. That's really exciting to see that space fill up, and also to hear about your experiences using fairly nuanced cultural protocols and having protocol managers assigned to very specific areas of access and restriction. I thought that was really neat to hear. And I'm sure that there'll be a couple of questions that will hit on that a little bit. So we'll enjoy hearing more from you in a little bit. But switching gears now to Jennifer, are you ready to take it from here?
Yeah, sure. I'm ready to go. Thanks so much. That was a wonderful presentation to hear about how you're using Mukurtu in your community, some of the successes and some of the challenges. So I'm really looking forward to talking with you more. So I'm going to be sharing a bit today about how the University of Oregon and worked with tribal communities throughout our state. So I'm going to be sharing a bit of that here today, and in the hopes that that will help you to get a sense of what does it look like on the side of when universities are using Mukurtu, and how does that show up for building relationships with tribal communities. Also, when it just is more complicated when you are when you're trying to do this work. I just want to double check. Can you see my screen? Okay, just wanted to make sure. If there's any technical issues and you're not seeing me advance in my slides, just let me know. Let me minimize this here real quick. So I first also want to be able to acknowledge the traditional homelands that I am coming from. Hold on one second. Let me bring this back here. It was not letting me advance in my slides, so let me try this one more time. There we go. So I acknowledge that the University of Oregon is located on Kalapuya-Illihi, the traditional homeland of the Kalapuya people. And following treaties between 1851 and 1855, the Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. Today, descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, Community of Oregon, and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians of Oregon, and continue to make important contributions in their communities at UO and across the land we now refer to as Oregon. And that is a statement that was created by the Native Studies faculty, staff, and students, and also an extended statement was created by the UO libraries as well. And so the work that I share with you today is an extension of this statement, meaning we make a traditional land acknowledgements, but the work that we do on a daily basis working with tribal communities is an extension of those statements and an acknowledgement of the traditional homelands that the University of Oregon resides on. So just as a quick overview, I'm going to be providing this information in the context of a larger grant that we worked on with Washington State University and a variety of other different repositories as well. So it's through that context and lens. And so I'll provide an overview of how we then started thinking about building an Oregon Tribal Archives portal, some examples from our test site that we're still working on, and then of course, hopefully lots of questions and discussion at the end to help provide you with additional information. So what I'm sharing with you today is part of a larger initiative and grant that the University of Oregon was lucky to be a part of. It was the Mukurtu Hubs and Spokes Grant, a sustainable national platform for community archiving. So we were part of this larger grant with University of Alaska Fairbanks, University of Hawaii, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Yale University. So they each were working on parts of this grant to build up and show how you can build out the platform in working in a university setting and doing outreach with tribal community partners in order to, in essence, do more of a train the trainer situation where we could use our infrastructure in our university to be able to share and build out sites with tribal communities, or in, of course, also hosting our own content. So that was one of the biggest things that we focused on. I also just want to acknowledge I'm just part of it, one person that's part of a larger team that worked on this. So there was myself and then also Nathan Georgitis, who were both kind of the program coordinators for this grant. I'm now in Indigenous Race and Ethnic Studies. I was previously in UO Libraries. Nathan is still within the UO Libraries. And then we also were lucky to hire Bodine Moik, who she served as our project manager and was an incredible, she was one of our main point person as we worked with and did outreach with the tribal communities we worked with. So it was really great to have this incredible team of people to work with. Our goals with the project, our biggest goal, of course, with using this platform is to build and cultivate relationships with the tribal nations in Oregon. So we felt using this platform was the best way to do that. It provided this vehicle to be able to not only talk about the collections that we had at the University of Oregon, but also as a way to then continue to build those relationships with the collections that tribes had and how we could help to coordinate being able to have them use this platform, using our knowledge and sharing that with them, as so many of them have their own museums and archives. And if this could be a way they could showcase their collections without us actually also hosting it, we wanted to be able to do whatever was possible for them. So just a quick overview, we began this around 2017, and then from 2017 to 2019 that's when we did the bulk of the outreach and work with these the tribal community partners we worked with. And then we also got a small extension grant just in the tail end of 2019 into 2020, and we finished up a smaller part of the project then, which I'm going to highlight at the end of this presentation. But when we began this project, we initially just started calling this project Mukurtu West, and then kind of grown out of that is now an Oregon Tribal Archives portal, as we envision being the vehicle to be able to host sites for tribes, but also if they want to host them themselves, we're working with many communities to do that as well. But this is where we started, meaning we were the main hub to host this, but then these are all of our different spokes, and some are actual repositories. So of course you see University of Oregon special collections in university archives. I'll talk about some of those collections. You also see Museum of Natural and Cultural History. And then some tribal communities we worked with as well, Warm Springs, Siletz. There are many others we've also brought in since then. And then also at the University of Oregon, we have the Northwest Indian Language Institute, which they've done an incredible job of. They have their own, they're hosting their own site. The back end is actually hosted by Reclaim, but they kind of manage their own site. But this just gives you a sense of some of the great communities and content that is coming into this site. And then from here, this is what our site looked like initially. This was actually probably a couple years ago before an update came out. So these were the communities that we listed on our site, and then some of the categories that we had created based upon a lot of the content that was coming out of special collections, as well as from just some of the communities that we were working with, and we were just testing it out to see what are some categories. And then, of course, with the update that happened about a year ago or earlier than that, then now this is kind of what our hub looks like, where there's the featured content at the top, and then below that are the communities. So, but you can also have the main links at the top, getting you to the collections, the communities, categories, and also the dictionary. But what I want to highlight for the majority of the rest of this presentation is highlighting some of the examples from our collection to give you a sense of how in a university setting, what are some collections we decided to upload, and how we're using the protocols on the back end, and also how this looks as we're working to build it out, because the main part of this was really testing and improving the site, not only for our communities we were working with, but also for the platform in general. So as I said, these were some of the first sites that we worked with, the communities we started to build out. And here at the top is where I note this is some of the biggest content that was added and tested. And then these below are some future communities that we made contact with. But as part of this, we didn't yet add any of the content from those communities. But these are some that we'll be working with, like Grand Ronde, Coos, Lower Umpqua, Siuslaw, Coquille, Cow Creek, and Burns Pike. So we look forward to what the future might hold and working and building out with them as well. And this is just meant to show you the really detailed work that Bodine and others put in to when we did site visits and working with the communities, community engagement. We gathered user stories and then aggregated those not only for ourselves, but also to send back to WSU to build out and improve areas that we really wanted to see built out. And so I just wanted to add that as context. You don't have to understand everything that is shown here, but just wanted to see, you could see this flow. And then I'm going to share with you just some of the ways that we made updates and improvements that really helped on the university side to build out some of the collections that we had because we wanted to make sure it looked the same way as if somebody was coming into the reading room, that they could see the collection in the same way. So one of the first collections that we tested out was the University of Oregon Annual Mother's Day powwow posters. And this was a huge collection that we had digitized with the Many Nations Longhouse here on our campus. And the steward of the Longhouse really wanted this project done. And so this was one of the first collections that we had digitized that we could then upload and begin building out. And I just have some screenshots here, but at the end of this presentation, I can also take you into our actual test site so you can see what some of these larger posters look like. But they have all of the digital content. They have the protocols listed, the communities, and also some additional information about each of the years as well. And so we look forward to kind of building this out further, because how we envision using the collection and within a university setting is not only having the items within the collection, but being able to tell stories about that year or what happened during that year of that certain powwow, or doing interviews, conducting interviews as part of classes, and then having those interviews uploaded and connected to these posters. So that's part of a project we're working on as part of our Native American and Indigenous Studies academic residential community. So that's a way we're probably using the collection most uniquely as part of classes and as part of building these collections out. Another large collection that we really worked on expanding and testing out as part of this test phase in getting new ways to use Mukurtu was the Southwest Oregon Research Project. So this is an early digital return project that was done in the mid to late 90s, where instead of actually going to repositories and digitizing the collections at the National Archives or the National Anthropological Archives, this was all about actually getting photocopies from collections about the tribes in Western Oregon. And so this is one of our largest collections at the University of Oregon Special Collections. And we wanted, and it's already been digitized, but we wanted to do the upload and put up sections of the collection in collaboration with the tribes and making sure this was done correctly, even though much of this content is already freely and openly available and has also been published in other areas. We wanted to make the way that we approach this work more of a larger project and conversation so that we could upload parts of the collection that was going to be meaningful to people. So we actually tested out certain folders that we knew other linguists on our campus were working on parts of this collection. So we have the Northwest Indian Language Institute. We also have a large linguistics department where they were using and working on certain native languages from Southern Oregon and Northern California that related to this collection. So we chose about 4 or 5 different folders to be uploaded. And when I actually can take you into the site and show you this, you can see that one of the unique things we did was more hierarchical detailing of this collection so that it would be the same way as if you're coming into the repository and you could see these are all the folders in the collection. And then we have a large PDF for each folder. And so the large PDF is connected to each of those items. So as you go into this collection, you can click through the PDF just as if you were in the reading room. So you can see how it's organized all together, just as if you were in our reading room or if you go to the National Anthropological Archives. So that's a unique thing that came out of doing this work with the Mukurtu team and working with special collections and then also with the tribal communities. So it was really useful to be able to test this collection. And this was one of the ones I was most excited about. And we're going to continue to add and upload for this collection. But another one I wanted to share with you was the work that we did with the Museum of Natural and Cultural History. So this is our museum at the University of Oregon that not only covers everything that you would expect in a natural and cultural history museum, but it has a large focus on Native communities in Oregon, specifically objects like a large basket collection. And so we wanted to work with the staff there, and they had been brought in, of course, early on as one of our partners. And so out of that, we wanted to figure out ways that we could help them to expand further out if they wanted to do online exhibits for certain baskets. They already had much of their collection digitized and online, but we wanted to use the platform to be able to tell stories and upload video and connect even further with tribal community partners, because this was an initiative of the museum as well. So we added quite a bit of content for the baskets and specifically uploaded ones that they knew they needed additional information about, or that they wanted to do outreach and tell stories and do interviews with tribal community partners. So as part of this work that we did with the grant, we actually did a lot of that outreach with working with Elizabeth, who is one of their curators, and she did a lot of the uploading, as well as Jasmine Ike Lopez, who she was one of our student workers, and just want to acknowledge her as well too. She did incredible work in uploading so many items from their collection onto the back end. And Jasmine is actually a member of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, and she had previously worked up at WSU too before she transferred to the University of Oregon. So we were very excited to have Jasmine as part of our team as well. But one of the really great things that came out of this was being able to, of course, add protocols and categories and additional keywords and other information that the museum didn't have before about certain objects. And then another thing that we did as part of our extended grant that we did was we did conduct some interviews with tribal elders. And so those recordings are going to be added to those individual collection items. And they will also be standalone digital heritage items, but they will also be connected to those that the tribal elders were talking about. So a tribal elder that we interviewed was Myra Johnson Orange. She's a Warm Springs tribal elder, and she talked about a lot of the different baskets, and she was able to have conversations that we will record, and then some that we didn't as well, or that won't be made public. And we had some really great insights from Myra also just about what it's like to do this work and the difficulty in doing it for her, because many of the baskets, she's trying to get information. Where did these come from? How were they acquired? She even had a really great connection with one of them that may be one of her great grandmothers. And so that's why we do this work, to have those conversations, add these stories, and to also understand better, and that I could be help in connecting the museum to Myra, and to be able to start to have a better understanding of these baskets that the museum staff might not, or that they're just really wanting to ensure that they do a better job of doing this work. We're also going to be adding a lot of the traditional knowledge labels to the collections that haven't been there before, both in special collections, in the Museum of Natural and Cultural History. And one thing that we're still working on to try to figure out is working with our tribal communities in whether or not they want to actually have their collections added to the site, if they want them to be standalone. And that's something that we continue to work out in part of these next steps, because we want to also respect each tribe's data sovereignty. If they do not want their collections hosted at the university, we will support them in whatever decisions they want to make. But the most important thing is that we respect their wishes. And if it is they're going to be hosted and standalone, we will simply link to them. And maybe our portal might be collections coming from a variety of repositories on our campus and museums. But we can still help the tribes. So we continue to build out the site and specifically focus on how we can use the portal as a way to support education curriculum, especially with new mandates throughout our state with SB 13, which is new curriculum to ensure tribal history is taught throughout our schools in the appropriate way. So we're trying to also use this platform to create content for that and to help teachers and educators to have content that is coming directly from tribal communities, and working with to create that core curriculum or host parts of curriculum, and then also connecting it to our Native Studies minor and major. And I teach an Indigenous Research Methods course, and creating internships. So it's all going to be connected to a lot of the work that we're doing as this larger project, as well as connected to the work we do in my Native Studies department. So I hope this helps to give you a general overview, and I look forward to talking to you a bit more, and I can share more out too, but I know my time is up, so I don't want to go into the other person's presentation, but I can also get on a little bit later and show you more about the site. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Jennifer. That was really, really great. And I took some notes, and I feel like there's lots that I can learn. It seems like you're the institution that's maybe stretched the parameters of what you can do with Mukurtu. So that's really exciting to see some of the things that you've been doing, and also the exciting collaborations that you've made along the way. I think it's just so integral. So it's really inspiring to hear about the things that you've been doing. And I know that there was a question that came in during your presentation about those 4 traditional knowledge labels. And this might be a broader question, but I know that there's more than just the 4 that were there that are available. But I believe that somebody will be able to share slides, or the presentation is being recorded, so those can be brought up again. But did you want to comment at all about those 4?
Yeah, and sorry I didn't explain that further, but that's part of built into the platform. Is those were just 4 examples. The traditional knowledge labels, there's a set core traditional knowledge labels of, I think there's almost 15 to 20 different knowledge labels, but those were just an example of 4 so I could show you and highlight that that's an important thing that we're working to attach some of those traditional knowledge labels. And those can also be made more specific to tribal communities. And if you're looking for a really great collection to see, and I will add this link in the chat, is the Passamaquoddy's people site, because which is a Mukurtu site, and they have attached the knowledge labels to all their recordings for the FWEX recordings that they have from the Library of Congress on there. And they've also added in addition to the traditional knowledge label, they've also added their own Passamaquoddy language to the label. And there's a short recording to explain what that word means. So I just want to acknowledge and have you go check out that site. Thanks, Michael. I saw Michael on here, so I was hoping maybe he would add that. But they're one of the really incredible sites and communities using that. So we've used that site quite often, or I use that site often as we're talking to tribal communities to say, this is how the Passamaquoddy people have used these traditional knowledge labels in connection with the Library of Congress and these recordings. And so that's a really great example of how to use it, and also how to incorporate your own tribal language into the labels. And if you have further questions about the labels, I can talk more about it at the end as well. But thanks for the question. It looks like Matthew asked that. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. And I put a link in there to Local Contexts, which is a site that details more available options that are there for traditional knowledge labels. And for a health sciences library like where I work, there's biocultural labels that are a little bit newer and more recent. So that kind of allows us to apply those where it's the most appropriate for those types of materials and collections. But before I get too ahead of myself with question and answer, I want to introduce our last speaker, who I've already actually introduced, but I just want to give Selena a chance to tell us what's on her mind and show us what she's been doing where she is.
Thanks, Jonathan. Willie Chan, everybody. I'm just going to get to okay. Just to get you guys up to speed on my work. In 2018, I was invited by Chikloon Village Traditional Council, also known as CVTC, to be a part of their cultural resources program. They actually created a position for me, the cultural resource specialist at the time, to formalize their permanent collections and archives. They had been collecting cultural expressions, materials that reflected their cultural expressions for many years. However, there was no organization or documentation to kind of support the collecting process. So I was brought on because of my experience in museums to help formalize the collection. However, since then, I have been invited to stay on with the tribe, and I now serve as the museum specialist, where I manage the cultural expressions of the tribe. When I was invited to do this work, I did a lot of research coming from a traditional museum background. I was quite familiar with a lot of CMSs out there, most notably probably Past Perfect. A lot of Alaska institutions use Past Perfect because they're smaller. However, based on conversations I had with the tribe, I recognized that a lot of these CMSs, including Past Perfect, were not really conducive or supportive of tribal needs in regards to access, features, as well as capability. And so I stumbled upon an article written by Kim Kristen talking about Mukurtu. And so I did some more research, reached out to Mukurtu, and based on conversations that I had with the tribe, we decided that that was going to be the platform we wanted to do. And as happenstance would have it, at the time, Washington State University Center for Digital Scholarship and Curation had publicized that they were going to be opening up a new cohort for their Tribal Digital Stewardship Cohort program. So we applied and were accepted and spent the next year learning not only about Mukurtu, but as well as how we could use Mukurtu to strengthen how we provide access and share our cultural materials. So what you see before you in the slideshow is our current home screen, which is actually going to be changing. Like Cordelia, we too are currently updating and kind of revamping our site based on some recent conversations we've been having. However, in 2019, as part of the TDSCP, Chikloon Village Traditional Council's Cultural Resources Program developed the Naidiniana Kaya Hueltsit de Class, also known as Chikloon Native Village Information We Share platform. The project is an immersive platform where Naidiniana Kaya tribal citizens, other Atna-Dene, and the public can engage with materials from the CVTC permanent collections and archives, as well as other repositories across the United States. Visitors can support Naidiniana Kaya in its mission to foster connectedness to Atna sharing and education. The site was designed with two primary goals in mind. The first was to perpetuate traditional Atna cultural knowledge, and the second was to support the tribe's digital repatriation work. To assist us in the first, in perpetuating cultural knowledge, we really wanted to foster a sense of community in the digital realm. Because of this, we kind of followed through with our tribe has a policy of tribal citizens first. Although a lot of our programs and services are open to those outside of the tribal community, we always think of our tribal citizens first. Because of this, the site reflects that. As you can see, one of our goals was to make sure the Ahtna language was implemented throughout the site. And with that tribal citizens first policy, we also made the decision that not all of our Ahtna language was going to be translated. Even though the site is open to those outside the tribal community, we felt it was important to create a personal private space for our tribal citizens. So some of it is translated. I would say majority is. As you can see at the top, we have an Ahtna Kanagat dictionary. Ahtna Kanagat means Ahtna language. But we also make sure that there is some stuff that is kind of kept private. One of the things that we did when we specifically designed the site is we were thinking about the features that it offered. And one of the things that we really liked was not only the ability to implement Indigenous language, but was also the collections feature and how they're organized and how you can organize them. So as I mentioned, we're revamping our site. So when we initially did the collections, we started uploading digital heritage items and then organizing them into collections. We originally started with family collections, but upon further conversations as of late, it came to our realization that it wasn't quite creating that true sense of community and understanding that we really wanted. And so because of that, we decided to use more of the sub-collection feature. And I couldn't show you what we're going to do because I haven't done it yet, but I did want to give you an example of the sub-collection feature. So currently I'm working on an IMLS Veterans project. We have the William D. Wickersham World War II collection. We had a tribal citizen who served during World War II, and he was an amazing collector of knowledge. So we have an arrangement of materials that reflects time of service. And we've divided those into sub-collections to kind of help users understand the collection better. So as you can see in the circle red area, we have the main parent collection, and then it's divided into these sub-collections. So with our new revamped site, we're going to structure all of our tribal citizens collection materials the same way. Our collections are comprised predominantly of materials that are donated by our tribal citizens. And the way the tribe is structured, all of our tribal citizens are descendants of Balaskulia and Frank Nikolai. Balaskulia and Frank had 3 daughters, Olga, Annie, and Mary, and 2 which you can see in this picture. So in our new way that we're going to structure our site, we're going to have 3 main parent collections, Olga, Annie, and Mary. And then their family collections, which are the ones we currently have on the site, will be the sub-collections. So additional families. And we decided to do this also because originally when we had structured it by family, we also did by clan. And not all of our tribal citizens, because of a disconnect from cultural knowledge and history, don't actually know what their clan is. So we wanted to make it sure that they felt comfortable in maneuvering through the site. So that's why we're going to stick with ancestors instead. Just kind of like how Jennifer showed you the back end of her site, this is the back end of our site. So the way Mukurtu is designed is you're allowed to create communities, and through those communities, you create your protocols. So as you can see, these are our communities currently, but you're going to notice that they're not all tribal communities. And this kind of leans into our second goal of digital repatriation. So let us just focus for now on the Naidiniana Kayak. Right now, we have our Chikwin Village community, and then our protocols were based on the clans. These are probably going to change just because of that organizational structure I just mentioned. However, our public access will still remain Ketsitne, which in Ahtna means iron people. That is another term used for non-Indigenous white people. Now let's focus on the other ones. So as you can see, we have the American Philosophical Society, the Anchorage Museum, and the Smithsonian National Anthropological Archives. As part of our participation in the TDSCP cohort program, when you're going through that entire cohort, some of the training talks about really trying to help tribes structure and organize how they want to collaborate with other organizations. And so part of that is creating a collaborative curation model, which we did. And it was pretty successful that we've decided to kind of adopt that process into all the things that we do. Part of the TDSCB cohort is also at the end of the program, you get to go to Washington, DC, and you get to visit a bunch of different repositories that are there. As part of that process for us, we recognized that there was a lot of more materials out there that reflected our culture and history that we didn't know existed. And if we didn't, as collection managers and cultural stewards, our tribal citizens obviously did not either. And when, as many of you know, a lot of federal repositories are a very complicated process, going through the finding aids, lexicons are completely different. What a federal repository will identify a material is not necessarily how we identify materials. And so because of that, we wanted Wet'suwet'en Kalas to be kind of the one-stop shop for all of our tribal citizens and for anybody else who really wanted to experience Ahtna culture. And because of that, we decided to focus on digital repatriation because it was the most immediate way that we could bring back materials, collectively gather them onto our Mukurtu site, and not only allow the metadata that those institutions have already developed be present, but add it to ours. So then that way our users could have a more rich experience and really be able to explore the materials that are on the site. So to give you an example, as you saw earlier, American Philosophical Society is one of the institutions that we contacted and were able to get some digital materials. This photograph here is a historical photograph from our collection. It's a photograph of Copper Center Pete, Chief Andrew, and Tennis Charlie. These three were all chiefs, Ahtna chiefs. And what we discovered through doing our research was that the American Philosophical Society and the National Anthropological Archives actually have materials relating to Tennis Charlie that we do not. So we were able to implement an audio recording of Tennis Charlie. As you can see on the right, this is the lower half of the same page. And then when you go to the recording of Tennis Charlie on our site, you're not only able to see the cultural narrative that we've written about it, that the information that we have gathered, but you're also able to see, you're also able to see APS's metadata. So not only are we sharing the information that they've acquired, but we're also updating it with ours. And it allows our users and APS's users, if they choose, to be able to come to our site and experience everything. So you can not only get to hear Tennis Charlie, but you get to see him. And what's unique to this experience is the fact that APS and NAA don't have any images of Tennis Charlie. We have them. So this is just one sample of how we're using this for digital repatriation. And going into the future, we're really intending to delve deeper into other repositories to bring back those materials, add them to our site, combine them with the materials that we have, and then providing a more in-depth experience. We're very excited about the potential and the capability that Mukurtu offers. One of the things, and this is probably echoing what Cordelia said earlier, is really the fact that Mukurtu is more conducive, more reflective of tribal needs. I know a lot of people had questions about access and how we kind of maneuver through that process. Here at Chickaloon, we have a cultural committee who makes all decisions that are about anything culturally relevant to the tribe in regards to how we share it, what we share, and that all of our decisions for Mukurtu go through the committee first. And then after things that are approved by the committee, it gets sent up to our tribal council for final approval. And that's when we actually will publish something. When we get new materials that get donated to us, our tribal citizens on our deed of gift have the option to provide or list restrictions they want to the materials that they donate. So when we make the decisions in cultural committee, we take into account the deed of gift restrictions that were placed originally when the material was donated to us. Thus far, though, we've noticed from conversations we've had with our tribal citizens, as well as tribal council, there's a lot of people that actually aren't putting restrictions on the materials. The only things that we tend to have restrictions on are traditional stories, cultural sites. We do have, our TIPO is doing a geosite location project right now. And so a lot of those geolocations will be private for tribal citizens only. But for the most part, right now, the tribe is really about getting our information out there, predominantly for our tribal citizens, but as well as to those outside of the tribal community, simply because we want to correct the current narrative that's out there. At the same time, we really also want those outside of our community to celebrate our Atna culture and history. And so that way, we're not only continuing it for our younger generations, but we're also creating and fostering an Atna community for them outside of our immediate area. And we hope that that will also kind of just really foster a more positive relationship with those that we work with.
Thank you so much, Selena. That was really great. I mean, yesterday we were discussing a little bit about how you're going to reorganize the communities into sub-communities and really do it in a really culturally appropriate way that really responds to your community. I thought that was really great. Looking forward to seeing what that looks like. And I'm also impressed with the collaborations with some of the non-Indigenous repositories like the APS, American Philosophical Society, and where who has records pertinent to your community as well, and where those opportunities exist for collaboration. I might have a question myself if someone else doesn't ask it, but I know I'm interested in hearing more about that process. But now we have about 20 minutes left for our wonderful panelists to answer your questions. And we have a few ways, I think you're aware, to ask questions. You can ask directly in the chat here, and then I'll see that over here on my end, or you can use the anonymous question form to ask your questions. So make sure that you get those questions in. We already have a few in here, so we're going to make sure that we get the ball rolling with just an opening question about, these are great projects, but undoubtedly there are some significant challenges. And so I'd like to know what are some challenges that you've encountered with implementing the Mukurtu CMS? I see Jennifer. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Jennifer.
No, I'll let Selena go first, and then I'll go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jennifer. I would say for us is the decision-making process. So our tribal citizens and our visitors, they want stuff now. And there is definitely a need, this sense of immediacy. I've been in some other presentations with other Mukurtu users, and I know Monique is on this call as well, but our elders are dying, which means their cultural knowledge is at risk of being lost forever. So documenting it and then making sure to share it is really, really much needed. However, as I mentioned, the process that we go through for approval is quite extensive. I mentioned all of our cultural decisions go to our cultural committee. Well, our cultural committee meets once a month. And then once it gets approved, it has to go to tribal council, and tribal council meets once a month. And sometimes the committee meets after the council meets. So that means we have to wait a whole other month before we can get approval. And then once it's approved, I can upload it. So I definitely think the decision process can be quite lengthy and can be complicated. I think the other complication we've had from Mukurtu too is I'm a lone ranger. I am the only person who deals with the management of our collections, which means I am the only person right now who even knows how to use Mukurtu from the tribe. Angie, our TIPO, who also went through some training, she has a little bit familiarity, but she hasn't actually uploaded any of the materials. I've done all of it. So not having enough hands to do the work is definitely been a hurdle for us to try to get over. We're hoping to have an intern work with us over the next year that I can train to help me do the work. But yeah, I would say that's probably the other thing. In regards to working with other repositories, since in our digital repatriation work that we're doing, a lot of them have been really supportive and agreeable to helping us and providing materials. I think the challenge that we've had is dealing with their finding aids in the lexicon so we can identify the materials. The other challenge that we have had is some institutions like NAA, because they have such a mass amount of materials and very limited staff, they're scanning things as PDFs, which is great. It's a shareable file, shareable document, great. But as many of you know, that's not an archival quality file type. So it's great for us to get a PDF, but what we really want is a TIFF, you know? So being able to kind of have that conversation about getting digital copies that not only are shareable, but are archival quality so that we can actually house them here as well. So we're not constantly having to go back to these repositories to get copies is another challenge that we're faced with.
Thanks, and Jennifer.
Yeah, and thanks, Selena, for sharing those. That's really just, I mean, not great to hear that you have the challenges, but great to hear how you're trying to meet some of those or just tackle some of them. So thanks for sharing. Some of the biggest challenges for us is because we're in a university setting, which is much different, is that a big challenge for us, especially early on when we were trying to be a part of this grant and get this implemented, was just getting institutional buy-in to support yet another system, because university libraries specifically usually have so many platforms that they're already supporting. They often see this, or can be viewed as, well, why should we support yet another system? So for us on the beginning stages of this project, it took a lot of numerous presentations by us, those of us who were supporting the project, to help our university to understand why doing this is so important. And since then we've come a long ways, but it's still a challenge, especially, and ours might be different than others, but for us it was a challenge. And I think now that I'm within our Native Studies program, it's a bit easier because of our focus on Native Studies and projects, and that I can hopefully bring in some additional funding to continue the support of the program. I think another challenge for us is because we want to be able to support the tribes in utilizing and using the platform, but many of them, you know, like Selena said, there's so many of them that are lone arrangers. They're the only person in their community doing this work, or they're already taking so much on. So it's really, again, infrastructure or manpower who does or doesn't have the personnel and staff to actually manage the platform, because some of them don't want to have us host it, which we're completely fine. We want them to host it wherever and however they want. But then if they choose to host it themselves, they then don't often have the infrastructure or staff to begin it. So it's trying to figure out how to best support the tribes and how they want it to be hosted, because we want them to have the support they need, but we don't often even also add the support we need. So I think for us, meeting that challenge is funding. We want to get more additional funding so we can hire more people at the university to work on these types of projects, or then also people that could go out to the tribes to help with setup and things like that. So we're trying to figure out the best way and how we could best serve the tribes, as well as work it into students learning how to do this as well.
Thanks for your response, Jennifer. And I can definitely relate with the institutional kind of hurdles that exist with something like this. When we installed Mukurtu, we had to go through an incredible amount of permission processes with various departments across campus. Even though we had immediate buy-in from our administration, there was still a lot of work that had to be done. So this sort of an FYI for those at larger institutions, that this can take a little while to have happen with those kinds of levels of permission. Cody, did you have any response to that challenges question that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, well, ditto what Selena said about permissions, because, looking at permissions, it's not just about, giving people, access and permissions. It's the archives themselves that, okay, we want to know if this is allowable, if we can put up this certain document or that certain document, and we have to go through our governor and tribal council as well for those decisions. So that's a challenge that we face as well. Plus, people wanting stuff right away, like Selena mentioned, why don't you have this? Why don't you have this? Well, it takes time because, like I said, we do have to go through that permission process ourselves. And we get a lot of questions about, the access to government documents. For example, our tribes in New Mexico are exempt from New Mexico's records laws, and the decision to provide access to people to government documents comes from governor and tribal council, and they can say no to everything. So I think that's one of the challenges for us, and being the lone arranger. But I have an assistant this year. Brittany came on board in February. Yay! Yep. So and she was the administrative assistant for the governor's office, and I had worked with her before, so that made things a whole lot easier for me. And I'm glad to have her help because she understands the archival process and what I have to go through. And so now she can join the mess. Challenges that those two, I think those two are the biggest challenges, is just trying to do things when you're by yourself and trying to get permissions when maybe your community doesn't understand that you have to go through processes as well.
Thanks for sharing, Cordelia. We've gotten a couple of other questions in. There's a two that are specific for Jennifer, but I do think that actually the second one here is something that all of us can probably answer, or all of you could respond to in some way. But when working with some of the various Indigenous communities with digital heritage items that are currently owned by other non-tribal institutions, do you have any kind of agreements in place with those Indigenous communities to return those in this digital capacity? Or, and this person that's asking this question is saying that their institution houses third-party materials as part of collections that belong to various Indigenous communities within the region, and they're looking for examples of how to return these in the responsible way, if only in digital form.
Yeah, that's a really great question. For the collections at the University of Oregon, a lot of the Native collections or those related to tribal government and policies, as well as their history, I don't think there's any that are in the process of being returned or going through that process, but there are some that in either the deed of gift or an attached deed of gift or an addendum has been created. The one I often provide the example of is, and the one that I worked with is the Theodore Stern faculty papers at the University of Oregon. He was an anthropologist that worked with a variety of various tribes in Oregon, Klamath, Umatilla, and as part of that, a portion of his records were actually, the collection hasn't been digitized, but I'm just talking physically that a portion of that, it was decided in the, in that collection, that portion that related so closely to Klamath and to Umatilla would be on permanent loan to those communities, meaning they would decide how that part of the collection was processed and who would have access. So if that, even a portion of that collection were to be digitized, that would be decided by those communities. And they're actually, a portion of the Stern collection is actually physically with the Umatilla tribe at the Temescallik Institute. So I always show that collection as a good way to steward a collection, especially when there's portions of the collection that, because it's a portion of the collection that is more kind of like a census he took of the tribes, and it has such personal identifiable information in there that the tribe should be the one to manage that. So that was done through an addendum to the deed of gift, because that was his wishes. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but we don't yet have any collections that are in the process of being returned. But if we do, we will definitely highlight that as part of the project.
Yeah, I think you got the question, but I'm curious if Cody or Selena have a comment or on this particular question about, any agreements with non-Indigenous institutions that house materials pertinent to your communities. Are those something that you're looking at or have in place?
We have a template for memorandum of agreements that we do with organizations. So anytime we partner with an outside organization, we always make sure that we have one. The materials that are currently on our site from EPS and NAA, we do not have an MOA with them, but those are materials that they've already given public access to on their own sites. So because of the copyright that they have to do that, it just kind of carries over onto our site. However, we just started working on a collaborative project with the Anchorage Museum, and we will be having an MOA with them. I think in regards to the question, because I think they said that it was a collection materials that were reflective of numerous cultural groups. I think probably the most important thing is kind of echoing what Jennifer said, meaningful consultation on how those tribes want to share their collections, especially if any of those materials are reflective of more than one cultural group. Because just because one tribe wants something to be shared a specific way does not mean the second one wants it to be done the same. So I think treading carefully, this is definitely uncharted territory, as I have seen in our digital repatriation work. Not many institutions are working on that right now. But I definitely think meaningful consultation, I can't even stress that enough, is probably first and foremost what should be done, just to initiate that relationship, because that's what it's going to be. You are going to have a very long future relationship with those tribes, because they're going to want to, and you should as well.
Thanks, Selena. And Cody, did you have anything to add to that?
Just working, our little background information again. The original Archives of Zuni was established in the mid-90s, or probably around the mid-80s, late 80s, mid-90s. But the only institution that I have worked with so far is the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress, working with them for the Doris Duke collection. So, and I just saw a message in the chat from Guha, and if you could explain this a little bit more, that would be great.
Hi, can everybody hear me, or should I say something?
Go ahead.
Oh, so what Cody's referring to is the Doris Duke collection, which was undertaken in 1968 by the Doris Duke Foundation at the behest of then Governor Lewis of the Pueblo of Zuni, to record the oldest male members of the community. And Cody, please correct me in the details if I get them wrong. But 19 of them shared stories, and Cody's already referred to this. Eventually, through a number of variety of circumstances, the collection made its way into the Library of Congress's American Folklife Center, where I work, for safekeeping, because the original analog tapes, which numbered about, I would say 800 or so reel-to-reel tapes, were in danger of deteriorating and degradation. Eventually, we at the center digitized the materials, and Cody and I began a long and complicated dance way back, I think almost from the time I reached the center in 2006, to try and figure out how to get the materials back to Zuni, which had been digitized. Along the way, we encountered problems of infrastructure, that is to say IT infrastructure, where storage was an issue with the community at the time. There was nobody there who could curate the materials, but by providence and all kinds of other matters, we have the most able Cordelia Hui, who went and got herself a degree and got herself an MLIS degree and became the tribal archivist. And last year, 2018, I ended up going back to Zuni to return 400 hours of recordings in digital format to the Zuni community. And that I think is one small example of the way that some federal repositories have made efforts to reach out to tribal communities to return these materials in digital format. And obviously digitization covers a multitude of sins, and there's some ugly stories, but then there's some great stories like the one that obtains to the Doris Duke, Zuni Doris Duke storytelling collection. And I know that colleagues at NAA, at NMAI, APS certainly have made a lot of effort and made it their mission actually to reach out and repatriate, and I use the term very loosely. Obviously, repatriation concerns a lot of different things, but the digital return of materials is what we're looking at, and getting materials back into the hands of the people who are not only the cultural owners of that material, but the people who can make the most use out of them, rather than non-native institutions. So I hope that was what you were looking for. Thank you.
Thanks, Guha. And we're right at the end of our time, unfortunately, and there were some great questions that came in, but I've asked our presenters to put their email addresses in the chat so that some of the questions that maybe were specific to one of the speakers could be directly put to them. So I would encourage our speakers to put their email addresses in there so that people could follow up with that. On that note, we're right at the end here. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for helping to move this along so smoothly. Thank you, Jennifer, Cordelia, and Selena, for your fantastic presentations and for your really thoughtful answers. Thanks everyone who could join us and for your great questions. We will make this recording available as soon as we are able. I'll also send out a follow-up email, and I'll ask our speakers if I can share their emails in that follow-up email to all the registrants as well. So yeah, thanks so much for coming, and have a good rest of your Friday.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Shanann.